Snapshot of the entire Egyptian chariot core. But it wasn't just wheels. They found twisted metal fragments that looked like axles. They found what appeared to be the tangled, rectangular remains of the chariot cabs themselves, now just piles of corroded bronze and petrified wood, all fused to the seafloor by centuries of relentless coral growth. What most people don't realize is that the divers reported an overwhelming, eerie feeling of dread. They were swimming through an underwater graveyard, and then they found the bones. Tangled within the chariot debris, just as the old reports had claimed, were bone shards. Hundreds, possibly thousands of them. Some were clearly animal, the skulls, ribs, and femurs of horses, exactly where they would be if they were still harnessed to the chariots. But others were unmistakably human. Spines, pelvic bones, and fragments of skulls all mixed together in a chaotic, terrible jumble. This wasn't just an equipment dump. This was the final, watery resting place of hundreds, maybe thousands, of elite soldiers and their animals who all perished in a single, sudden, and violent event. The crazy part? One of the divers, sweeping a high-powered light over a mound of coral, caught a faint, unnatural glimmer. Beneath the crust, something was shining, a dull, unmistakable golden sheen. This matched the most incredible, most dismissed claim of all, that among the army's wreckage was a single gold-plated chariot wheel, perhaps belonging to a high-ranking general or even the pharaoh. They couldn't touch it. The coral had locked it in place. To try and remove it would be to destroy it. The team documented everything. They took thousands of high-resolution photos and hours of high-definition video. They knew what they had found would send shockwaves through the world. They had found physical, tangible evidence that seemed to support one of the oldest and most foundational stories in human history. But here's the catch. This discovery, as monumental as it was, also opened up a massive can of worms. It challenged everything mainstream Egyptology had taught for the last 100 years. And that is why, when the initial findings were quietly shared with certain academics and institutions, the reaction was not excitement. It was silence. A cold, hard, frozen silence. But the discovery was just the first piece. The location was the second. A bridge at the bottom of the sea. So why this exact spot? What's so special about this random patch of the Gulf of Aqaba? Yeah, about that. This is where the story gets even more incredible. The location of the dive was not random. It was chosen because it's one of the most unique and bizarre underwater features on the entire planet. The Gulf of Aqaba, which separates the Sinai Peninsula from modern-day Saudi Arabia, is known for being extremely deep. We're talking about a massive underwater canyon that in most places plunges down to 5,000 or even 6,000 feet. That's over a mile straight down. It is a massive, impassable trench. Trying to cross it with an army of chariots or even on foot would be completely impossible. It is a sheer cliff of dark water, except for one very specific place. Right where the divers found the army, there is a massive flat land bridge that spans the entire Gulf. It's an underwater plateau stretching nearly 10 miles from the shore of a massive beach in Egypt called Nuweiba to the shore of Saudi Arabia. And get this, on either side of this bridge, the seabed plunges dramatically into those 5,000-foot deep abysses. But the bridge itself, it's relatively shallow. Now, shallow is a relative term. It's still about 900 feet deep at its deepest point, but compared to the mile-deep canyons on either side, it is a raised pathway. The sonar maps show it clearly, a distinct, massive underwater road 10 miles long and several miles wide. This underwater pathway is the only place in the entire 100-mile length of the Gulf of Aqaba that an ancient group of people could have even attempted to cross. What most people don't realize is that this geographical feature is a perfect one-to-one match for the ancient story. The biblical account describes the fleeing Israelites being trapped against the sea with mountains on either side and the Pharaoh's army closing in. The location at Nuweiba Beach is a perfect fit. It's a massive, sprawling beach, but it's completely walled in on either side by steep, impassable mountains. The only way in is from the west, and the only way out is forward into the sea, and right there at that exact spot is the underwater bridge. This geography is a massive wow factor because it's a detail that ancient writers could not possibly have known about. You can't see it from the surface. You can only find it with advanced sonar. Yet the story they told points directly to this one-of-a-kind location. The geography itself acts as a massive, silent piece of evidence, suggesting that something historic and catastrophic happened right here. A corridor can also be a trap. The linear distribution of the artifacts, the mile-and-a-half-long trail of wheels and bones, follows the path of this submerged bridge. It looks exactly like a group that was caught in the middle of the passage. This location also explains why the artifacts are still there. The 900-foot depth protected them from storms, ship anchors, and looters for millennia. And the unique currents created by the deep canyons on either side have trapped silt and sediment on the plateau. This sediment slowly buried the artifacts. And of course, the warm, clear water is perfect for coral growth. The coral has acted like a natural concrete. It grew on the hard, solid surfaces of the chariots, the wood, the bronze, the leather. Over thousands of years, the wood rotted away and the metal corroded, but the coral held its shape. The divers weren't just finding wheels, they were finding wheel-shaped coral. They are essentially fossils of chariots. Without this specific geography and biology, any remnants would have been scattered and dissolved into nothing centuries ago. This land bridge, this perfect crossing, also explains the scale of the find. An entire army with hundreds of chariots, horses, and soldiers forced into this narrow 10-mile bottleneck would be completely and totally vulnerable. When the disaster struck, there was no escape. They couldn't go left. They couldn't go right. They were trapped. This tragic bottleneck explains the massive concentration of artifacts. It's a silent, underwater testament to a cataclysmic event. The fact that this terrain is so unique also helps debunk one of the main skeptical arguments. Critics often say, oh, it's just a random shipwreck. But here's the deal. This isn't a shipwreck. It's hundreds of military chariots, all from the same time period, all found in a linear path on the only plausible land crossing in the entire Gulf.